Hello and welcome to this session today, which is on managing assessment anxiety and nervousness. And so this is for anybody today that is approaching their endpoint assessments. Maybe you're approaching your functional skills assessments, but actually this is beneficial for any assessments that you're going through where you particularly experience a level of anxiety and nervousness. Now, I will just say here at the start, before we actually go any further, that anxiety and nervousness and even stress to a point and to a certain level are really helpful. They're really beneficial and they're really not our enemies. And they're purposeful because they will make us alert and they'll make us ready and prepared for the best performance we can deliver in our assessments. And therefore, if we didn't have a level of anxiety or pressure or stress or nervousness, then actually we'd be quite sleepy and lethargic, which of course will not produce the best in terms of our performance. So it does have a function, it does have a place, but this particular session is about, well, actually, how can we help ourselves when our anxiety impairs our performance, when our anxiety levels and our levels of feeling nervous and our levels of stress go beyond a point that actually we can function at our best. So if you feel that your performance is impaired by your nerves and anxiety, then this session is definitely for you. It's something that complements all of the support that you will be receiving anyway in terms of your mocks and work that you're doing with functional skills leads or your tutors on the programme. But this is something additional to really focus on you. And my name is Julie Bricknell. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself because I am a leadership development specialist, but I'm also a wellbeing specialist. And therefore, I really understand what is being asked of you and the requirements for the endpoint assessment. But I also understand what it's like when people do have anxiety and the effect that that can have on your performance and well-being, of course. So I'm an accredited coach with the International Coaching Federation. I'm also a member of the National Council of Psychotherapists and do have a postgrad in coaching. And the reason that that is something that I'm sharing with you is because I think it's important for you to understand who you're listening to today, particularly if you don't know me, and also because then you'll know what approach I'm taking. And throughout this session, I will be taking a coaching approach because I like to ask you questions and share tools with you to really get you thinking about how you're viewing the assignment, the assessment, sorry, but also your own anxieties, and we can work through that together. So without further ado, these are the objectives. So by the end of the session, you will have 5 strategies for managing the assessment anxiety. And therefore, the 5 strategies will structure the session here on in. You'll also get 3 different models. So I'm going to share with you some theories and models to help you think about your own assessment anxiety. And we're going to also give you 9 tools and techniques to really psych yourself up ready for your assessment. And that's in those immediate stages before your assessment. So these are all things, though, that you can be doing to prepare yourself and to get ready. And we'll also at the very end think about, well, actually, when you're in the assessment as well, how can we also be at our best then too? So it's quite full. Please use this session as you want to. It's recorded, so of course you've got the flexibility to take notes, to pause, to reflect on things before we move on, or you can just listen to this as you go through. Absolutely. And if you want to take any actions, then please feel free to take those action points as well. So the first model that I'm going to share with you today is almost like an introduction to test anxiety or performance anxiety, also known as assessment anxiety. And that is around what's called the BEAR model. And this is a really great model, particularly to get you understanding about the impact and the power that your beliefs have on your outcomes of your assessment and how you feel about the assessments. So what the BEAR model says is that underlying here as the foundation, we have certain beliefs. And in this context, we'll have certain beliefs about our performance and how well we can be competent at doing the assessment. But also we might have beliefs in terms of whether we're going to pass or whether we're going to fail and so on. So we can have lots and lots of beliefs about our assessments and our exams. And what the bear model says that once we have these beliefs, so say for example, I believe that I'm awful at exams and I can't do exams and I'm going to fail this exam, then we're going to have certain emotions that come from that. And there's a link there. So of course, if I'm feeling that I'm going to absolutely fail the exams, then what are my emotions? What am I actually typically going to feel? And probably I'm going to feel inconfident. I'm probably going to feel uncomfortable. I'm probably going to feel anxious. Yeah, I'm probably going to feel nervous and so on. And insert here basically, so you can think of all the emotions that you might feel if you were to have that belief. And as a result of those emotions, we act in certain ways. So if we're doing a test that requires us to be quite to be verbal because we're speaking in that test, and actually we might become more hesitant. We might freeze. We might forget what we wanted to say. If we're writing in that assignment, we might just again we could freeze again. So all different actions could come from that. Um, we might even stutter more than we perhaps would normally, really forget our words, our train of thought, etc., etc. And then what happens is that after those actions, that's linked to our results. And so ultimately, the results of the exams can have a clear link back from actually the beliefs. And what the bear model would argue is that, as you can see, this purple arrow at the top there says that whatever results or outcomes that come from a certain situation are only ever going to be as good as the purple arrow that you can see on the screen that's entering into this structure. So you're only going to get as good as what you put into it, and therefore our beliefs are massively important because it has a clear link to the results that we're going to achieve. And so with this in mind, I would like you to think, you could absolutely pause this tape if you wanted to, or if you prefer just to listen on, then that's fine. But this is an opportunity for you to reflect and think about, well, what beliefs do I actually have about my exams going forward? And what impact are they actually having on your assessment performance? And I would like you to think about, in relation to this model, how can this model help you going forward? Because actually, if you believed something more helpful, so if you had more helpful beliefs, such as I am ready and I'm prepared and I've done as much as I can and I'm ready to do my best, then that belief would give far more of a much more of a comfortable and confident emotion. And I might feel a little bit more settled, I might feel more confident, I might feel like I'm in a place where actually I'm not as nervous or not as anxious, and therefore my actions might be a lot more fluid and I might speak a lot more confidently and fluidly and be able to say everything that I'd prepared for, and the results therefore show and be more positive and far more chance of passing. So it's a really good open introduction, and it's something to really think about and to note down. So even if you don't know the answers yet, this might be something in the future to really notice, what am I telling myself? What am I hearing in my own mind in terms of the beliefs that I am putting onto myself? You know, that I'm telling myself. Yeah, so that in a commentary that you might be having. And you might even have a little notebook that you might want to capture those down and really think about, how is this actually impacting me? And even go through these stages yourself. Maybe you've had experience of past exams, and how did the beliefs impact your results then, and so on. Because actually what we can find is that when it comes to the power of your beliefs, the first strategy can come out of this model, and that is that you can have in one side a column of a table what you believe, and you can insert here, you can put your own ones if you know them already, or if you note them down in future, but you put your beliefs on there. Typical ones that I hear when I coach are, I am terrible at exams, I hate exams, I'm going to fail. Yeah, how many of you feel that you already know you're going to fail? Yeah, we become mind readers, fortune tellers in our own fate, really. And of course, we know that there's a lot of theory out there that suggests that sometimes we can self-fulfill and we can actually achieve what we say we're going to achieve. So if we say we're going to fail, then sometimes that can just happen. So have a little think about what those beliefs are, those unhelpful beliefs that you might have. And the idea of this strategy is to then have a second column on this right hand side here, as you can see on the screen, and to think about, well, actually, what would be more helpful? So as you can see with this arrow, what are your limiting beliefs? Think of those first, and then think, well, what can I think that would be more helpful as a thought? So what you're doing is you're replacing or reframing that belief that you had to something more positive. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh yes, I'm great at exams and I love exams and I will pass. It doesn't have to be the opposites of what you're seeing. But actually, it could be something like this. And I have to say that your words will be far better than mine because they'll resonate with you and they'll be personal to you. But this is my go. This is my attempt, which is, well, actually, yeah, instead of saying I'm terrible at exams or that I'm awful at exams, how about, well, I'm well prepared. I have worked hard. I've worked hard all year. My tutor or your functional skills lead says that you're doing well, that you're exam ready, and I'm ready to do my best. Or what about I hate exams? Well, actually, yeah, okay, I prefer not to do them, but I'll get a sense of achievement after I've done them. And yeah, and I'm going to do my best. Or I will fail could become, well, I will prepare. I'll do as best as I can. I'll take every question as it comes in turn. So these are the kind of things that I want you to start thinking about and start replacing it with so that you've got a more positive way to go through your bear model, basically, so that we can therefore start linking upwards to a better result, if you remember the R of the bear model. So what helpful beliefs could you choose instead? And this might be a point where you want to reflect and stop the recording to really think about that for yourself. Or it might be that you want to move on and look at that at a later date. What I would also like to say is there's an opportunity here of you to think, well, what are all the things that concern or worry you about your exams? What are they? And for some people, again, typically who I coach, it's that I'm really worried that I'm not going to get everything done in the time. I'm really worried I'm going to freeze. I'm really worried that I'm going to forget what I prepared for. So there can be a whole host of worries that we might have. And I want you to think about your worries. What do you genuinely worry about or concern, or what are your concerns? And I would like you to list them. And you can either pause to do that or you can carry on. But I'm going to move on now with the assumption that you've got that list ready, or you can imagine that list is ready. So you've got a list of your concerns. And I want to now let you think about that and put that to one side whilst I explain this second model. As I said, I'm going to give you 3 models as part of this session. But this is the control. This is the circle of control and influence model. And this is from Stephen Covey, as you can see on the screen. And this is about controlling the controllable. Now, what Stephen Covey says is that there are 2 circles in which we operate. And you can research this, and some people say that there are 3, but I'm going for just the simple version so that we can look at this together in a really simple way. In terms of, well, the first circle is the circle of concern. Now, what this says is that in this circle, these are all the things that we will worry about, that we'll concern ourselves with, but we can do absolutely nothing about. So the weather. As much as I look on Google, the weather won't change on my holiday or my days off. And in here could also be people. We can't, of course, control what people think of us, or we can't control what's happened in the past, and so on. So there's some examples of what kind of things could be on the circle of concern. We could worry about it, we could spend time on it, we could waste our energy on it, but that's what it would be. It would be wasted energy if we concern ourselves with them. And if we're to relate this back to the context that we're here for, which is to help you with the exams, then what we would do is we would look at what are all the things that are completely out of our concern when it comes to our exams. Now, we are totally out of control in terms of what questions we're going to be asked. We don't know if we're going to experience a technical issue on the day that would be completely out of our control if the internet went down. We can't predict what topic areas are necessarily going to be asked. And we are not going to also be able to influence who assesses us because we're allocated a type of an assessor. So they are some of the things that that might be in there. There might be others as well. So you could just put your own in there, but those are the circle of concerns, like typical as an example. But the second circle that we can operate in, and that we have a choice to operate in, is the circle of control and influence. And when I said before, sometimes this is described as 3 circles, it's because sometimes control and influence are 2 separate circles, but we're keeping this nice and easy for the moment. So in this circle of control and influence, we will see that this is actually the place that we can operate from that is really going to be helpful. We can actually control the things that are in here. So when it comes to an exam, that might be that we can control what strategies we have, to cope in the exam, to go through the questions in the exam, any contingencies. So if the internet does fail us, then although we couldn't control that was going to happen, because of course if we could, we would always have amazing internet all of the time, but we could control what are our hotspots or what are our contingencies for internet. We can control everything that we do between the time now that you're listening on this to the time of your exam. You can control everything that you're going to do in that time before your exam. You can control what you're going to read, what you're going to revise, how you're going to look after yourself and keep yourself in terms of self-care and keep your well-being maintained so that you're ready to perform at your best for the assessment. You can also work out your time management. So of course, time isn't going to stop between now and then. So how are you going to structure that time in terms of making sure that you're prepared on time and so on? What resources do you have to support you? Can you get any more help from your tutors? And of course, as we mentioned before, at the end there, you can see beliefs. And we know that from the Bear model, that is something that's in our circle of control and influence. We can influence what we believe because that's within us. So these are the 2 circles, and the idea of introducing you to them is because of this. I don't believe that these 2 circles that we operate in are static. So yes, they do move, and of course what you feed is what you grow. So if you're constantly in that outer circle of concern, that orange circle here, then that typically breeds anxiety. So if you're familiar with exam anxiety, then perhaps it could be, according to this theory, it could be telling us that you might be operating more within the circle of concern than you are in the circle of control and influence. So you might be worrying about things that actually you can't do anything about. And you see, because you can't do anything about it, then of course that becomes rumination. You know, we can ruminate and we can worry, and it can be ongoing, and therefore you can see the words on the screen, such as you can experience frustration. You can feel like you're a victim because you can say things like, I suffer from anxiety, you know, and I suffer from this, and you know, and it's as though everything's out of your control and you can't do anything about that situation. That's what you can feel like when you're in the circle of concern. And it's reactive because you can feel sometimes you're just reacting things rather than actually selecting your response. And so you'll see in the words anxiety and stress on there because they can really breed within that circle of concern. And so the more we focus on those areas that we can't control, the more that area grows. And as you can see those arrows, so the more that we feel that we're in control gets smaller and smaller, that green circle there in the middle. So this is a really powerless position. In fact, it can be really paralyzing because we're focusing on all the things that we can't control. So if we're sitting there worrying about, well, what questions are we going to be asked? What if I'm asked this? Or what if that's, you know, often our worries start with what ifs. So then when we move on through this model, the same thing happens. If we focus in that circle of control, then it's in that circle that actually that broadens out, that gets bigger, yeah, and we can be more proactive in that role, and we feel more in control if we're in this circle, and we feel more positive, And where the word responsible comes from means, yeah, we're actually forming a response rather than a reaction. So it's in here that actually we can start feeling a bit more empowered. Actually, we feel more in control, we feel so much more positive, and we're ready to take on that exam. So this is a far more powerful position, and we really do have a choice about which one we're going to operate in, because if we can't do anything about the outside circle, why are we focusing on there? And we really need to choose where we're focusing in order to be the most effective we can be in terms of exams and exam readiness. So here we are. You can see that there's the circle of concern as a repeat, there's the circle of control and influence. And so today, yes, this is even a strategy. We're going to go through loads of strategies. We're going to go through tools and techniques. And anything going forward, all of the strategies and models and things that I'm going to be sharing are all parts and ways of you increasing that circle of control and influence. Because if you embed those strategies, if you apply them, then actually you are becoming more in that central zone, and that's, as I say, more powerful. So what I would like you to do is that list that you might have done in terms of the list of your concerns and your worries for your exams. If you've done that, then I would like you to plot that now. And for every single thing on that list that you're worried about, I want you to decide whether or not it's in a circle of concern, or whether or not you could plot that in the circle of control. Can you control it, or can you not control it? Is it something you can influence or not? Because then you can start to see, actually, where have you been focusing? Where are you focusing now? Are you operating in areas that you can't, that just overwhelm you because you can't do anything about it? Or are you operating in all the ways that you can control? So it also allows you to think about, and this is my coaching question to you, if I was coaching you, is what else can you be doing now from this moment until your exam starts to operate more so in that circle of control and influence, so that you're really prepared, so that you're really focused, so that you feel really confident and you put yourself in the best position possible to take that assessment on. So again, that might be something you want to reflect on now, and you can pause this, and if not, we'll carry on to listen to more. The third strategy that I would like to tell you about is that I think a great thing, people really resonate with this, is just to simply ask yourself, as a strategy, what do I need to do to start the assessment confidently? So imagine that you're in front of the PC, you're in front of your laptop, and you are about to start the assessment. What do you need to have done in order to be able to feel at your best? Will you need your portfolio in a certain way? Will you needed to have printed anything off? Will you needed to have made certain particular notes? And just visualize what perhaps the desk would look like. Would you have a drink of water? Would you have, what would it look like? What would you look like? What would your desktop look like, etc.? And you really start to think about, right, therefore, what do I need to do to action that so that I can be as confident as I possibly can? So think about yourself being confident in that assessment, and then think about, right, what do I need to do between now and then to make sure that I'm fully prepared? And it might be that that might create an action to speak to your tutor about something, or that you would need to brush up on a certain topic, or you would need to have done your mocks, but what are all the things that you would need to do to be really confident? And now, as we move on, we've talked now about two models. So let's just regroup. We've talked about two different models, the psychological models that can really help you think about how you see exams, how your beliefs can really impact your performance, and that your focus areas can really determine whether or not you feel in control. So these are great preparation models and strategies that come out of that to really prepare you. But actually imagine that you're coming up now to the assessment, and it's perhaps the morning of, or you are just a couple of hours away from it, or the hour leading up, or whatever, but it's the immediate time before your assignment. What can you do to really psych yourself up so that you've got a really positive mindset, and so that you're really ready to go in there with reduced anxiety or optimum anxiety, um, and so that you just feel just an optimum level of stress and nerves, and the kind of level that would be really helpful and supportive to you to be focused and to be ready and alert. Now, I'm going to offer you, there's 9 different strategies, if you like, that I want to offer you, or tools and techniques. One is thinking about your physiology, which means your body language. And Amy Cuddy is she's really wonderful. There's lots of things that she's done in terms of studies, excuse me, and I would definitely recommend that you have a look at her work, her studies, because what she says is there's something called the power pose, or the power of the pose, and she's very much looked at studies in terms of the winning pose. If you can imagine when somebody has been number one in a race and they're going through that race line and they've got their hands extended high in the air, that would be a powerful pose. And it's something just to Google or to look at Amy Cuddy power poses, because you'll start to see that actually when we feel like we're powerful, we make ourselves as big as possible. When we feel that we're not powerful, we normally make ourselves as small as possible, and our shoulders curve round, and we sit quite we sit quite curved and rounded in the chair, and as though we're small and meek and we want to reduce our size. And she says actually just open up your chest and open up your body posture, and it really makes a difference. And you can even spend just 2 minutes before you go into your assessment sitting in a powerful pose such as the winning poses, and it will do amazing. Like, it just really puts you into a winning mindset, because on a physiological basis, your physiology talks to your brain talks to your body, and your body also talks to your brain. So even just 2 minutes, according to the studies, of being in powerful positions, yeah, and who will need to know that you've even done them before you log on to your Zoom call or whatever, or to your exam portal. So that's one thing. The second thing is really thinking about your favourite music or popular song, just as you might have a gym song or running songs or whatever it might be, but only you will know what songs kind of pump you up and make you feel psyched up and ready. So that can be a really good thing to do as well, particularly if it's a powerful song, particularly if it's a song that's really positive and can do. The other thing to mention is you could just give yourself a last minute pep talk, or get a friend to do it, or get a member of the family just to give you some positive words, particularly if you're somebody who really responds well to external influence. And so if you can get that positive kind of interaction before you go into assessment, then again, that can be really positive and remind you that you absolutely can do this assessment. And actually just remind you that you wouldn't be put in for this assessment if you weren't ready, and if we didn't think that you were ready, or if Bill from Functional Skills didn't think you're ready, and so on. The other strategy is to remind yourself of past successes, maybe your tutor feedback, maybe the witness testimonies in your apprenticeship. You will have done some amazing things over the year. And regarding functional skills, Bill wouldn't put you through to your exams, absolutely not, if you didn't think that you were ready, because that wouldn't be responsible on his part. So you really can take that positivity in terms of that. Maybe you want to think about any past successes you've done, projects or things you've achieved, anything. It doesn't have to be within assessment, but just to remind yourself that you have this, that you can absolutely do this, and that you're ready. So it might be a bit of a kudos file, or any feedback that's been positive, or and just having positive things in a file or an electronic file or at your disposal, though, basically, so that you can remind yourself of the great things and your strengths and your successes and those positive feedback pieces, so that you can go in with confidence. Another idea is positive affirmations, and this basically, it's like a mantra. It's words, it could be a sentence, but it's having a positive thing to say about yourself. And it links to the bear model really, in the beliefs, because if you say I'm ready to be my best, I'm ready to be my best, it could be something like this, it could be I can do this, or whatever. Again, your words will be far better than mine, and what resonates with you will resonate differently with someone else, so we all need to choose our own words. But having a positive affirmation can be great, and you can look online and see lots of famous people have positive affirmations, so you can see what theirs are as well, and there's quite a lot online. But it's something to think about, because just telling yourself or having it on a frame, or having it on a post-it note, or having it just to see and to remind yourself. And for some people, positive affirmations really work. For some people, they don't. All of these strategies that I'm sharing with you on this slide are for you to decide whether or not they would work for you or not. I always think experiment, experience them all, have a go, see what works for you, because what's the worst that can happen? You're not going to lose anything from these. So just see what works for you. Other ideas of visualization, it's a very great strategy, very effective strategy if you can visualize yourself being really confident, speaking really articulately, speaking fluidly, and in your, for example, professional discussion, or being able to know the answers, or work through your maths test, or write out in English your English functional skills, whatever assessment that might be ahead of you. But visualize it, visualize yourself doing it, and doing it well, and doing it positively, because what that does is it's almost like a mental rehearsal, and it allows you to then go into that situation as though you're going in for the second or third or fourth time. So you feel like it's more practiced, it'll be more fluid, and you can practice, you can visualize what questions there might be asked, or how you would answer questions, but all in a positive way. But there's lots of research to say that visualization is really good, because it prepares you. It certainly allows you to have the confidence to know you can do it, because seeing is believing. And if you can see it as a visualization, if you can see yourself doing it, then again, it gives you more ability to actually do it practically. The other thing is to limit coffee, caffeine, sugar as well, because of course we know that caffeine is like anxiety. It speeds us up, doesn't it? It gets that heart going and so on. So if you've already got a level of anxiety that's quite high, then having caffeine, I can understand why you might be tempted to have a coffee before we go in, and it's a nice thing to do, it's a nice thing to drink. But actually, could we limit that? Could we perhaps have water? Could we have caffeine free or decaf? Could we use less sugar? Because again, sugar can be a stimulant, and we're already stimulated when we are anxious. So you're basically layering on top of anxiety with something to speed you up even more and more and more. So it's something to just think about there. And what I really love is the 10-second trick, because what this does is it allows you to incorporate two different techniques into one. And one is a part of a breathing technique, the other is part of a technique where we tense up all of our body. Now, I do need to say before I explain this, that if you are pregnant, you can't tense any of your abdominal areas. If you've got any pain in particular joints or particular limbs, then again, it's up to you what you want to tense in terms of your body. But the 10-second trick says, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe in for 10 seconds. I'm going to hold my breath, breathe in for 10 seconds and hold my breath for that 10 seconds. But at the same time as breathing in, you tense up your fingers, your arms, your legs, whatever you want to tense up, as many things as you possibly can in a healthy way that's for you. And at the same time, so you're holding your breath whilst you're tensing up, and you hold that for 10 full seconds. And then after 10 seconds, you just release all of your muscles. And at the same time, you breathe out. And it's got this overwhelming calming effect that I personally experience. And so try it, and you're only going to lose 10 seconds on that one if it doesn't work for you. But it definitely releases lots of tension in a really fast amount of time. So it could be good to just do that before you go into your actual exam, just immediately before and it just will allow you to calm. But breathing techniques in general are wonderful, and it's going to lead me on to the next couple of slides that we have ahead. But breathing techniques, it basically, if you can master breathing techniques, then this can be, and research backs this up, this can be one of the most effective ways of helping yourself before and during the exam, because of course we know that breathing is discreet, so we can do it without really people noticing. And I'm going to talk to you about a technique on the next slide. But breathing techniques can certainly be the first thing and the most effective thing to really calm you down, because what happens when you go to an exam or assessment is that you believe you're under threat. And if you believe you're under threat, then the breathing technique just calms you down and tells you, no, actually, you're not under threat, because the way that you breathe. So I will explain a couple of different techniques that you can do as well as part of this. Because ultimately, and we're moving on to our last strategy, we want you to be able to maintain your competence and your capability and to really achieve your potential in any exam that you've got ahead of you. And I think this model is amazing. It's very simple again, and I like simple models because we remember them, and they can just be even more effective, really. But what this model says is that we can operate in two boxes as illustrated on the screen, but one is we can operate in a competency mode. Now, competency mode is when all of your brain is fully functioning. So the blood supply is going to all elements of your brain, including the cognitive aspects of your brain, so the thinking aspects, the logical parts of your brain, the memory parts of your brain, the parts of your brain that are really thoughtful. So this could be the problem solving parts, and so on. Now, normally, when you're not under threat, you'll have a constant supply of blood to all areas of your brain, and so you'll have your whole brain accessible to you. And that is great in terms of your competency, because you will be competent and you'll be able to be logical and you'll remember things and problem solve and etc., linguistic wise, so speaking language. But what can happen is that sometimes we can operate in survival mode. And those of you that know about fight, flight and freeze responses, then you can associate that with the survival side of things, because the survival mode is when you operate in flight, fight and so on. Now, what happens is that when you're under threat, you start going towards the survival mode, because your body is starting to prepare you to fight that threat or to run away from that threat or whatever. But basically, because it's in survival mode, your brain is saying, I need you to survive. Your brain is responsible for you surviving. So if you feel that you're under threat because the exam, because of the exam, you're feeling under threat, then actually, when it comes to survival, this is where the blood goes to all of the essential parts of your body. This is where it will really pump through your heart. That's why you're starting to feel palpitations. The blood will go away from anywhere that's not needed, so it won't be in the thinking parts of your brain anymore. Because if you saw a real threat, if you were in front of a lion or a bear, of course you don't want to be thinking, oh, what lovely teeth you are. Oh, are you a grizzly bear or a brown bear? You don't want to be thinking. You just need to be acting. And so the blood goes straight to all your muscles so that you can run or act or fight. And it goes away from all of those, like the front, your cortex and the frontal cortex and all those other cognitive parts of your brain. So that is why all of a sudden, sometimes we lose our memories. We can't think what we're going to say. We can't get our words out, because we're in the survival mode. We're in that orange box that you can see on the screen there. So it also doesn't help that when we talk about fight and flight response, you of course don't have those available when you're in an exam, because of course you can't just walk off. You can't leave and just go and just run off. So that means that we tend to freeze in exams. It can be common for people to experience anxiety, to feel under threat, to freeze because the fight and flight option are no longer available. And therefore, what we need to look at is, when do we recognise that we're going over to survival mode? Yeah. And how do we recognise it? What signs are we showing as we go to survival mode? And how do we get ourselves back as well? Because otherwise, if we can't learn to do that, then we're going to be like this for the remaining part of our exam. And this is where we're freezing in the exam. Yeah. So we need to be able to, if we need to get out of that survival mode as soon as possible. And this is where breathing is really important. And I mentioned that it was part of the strategies before that I was going to talk about. And ultimately, what we need to do is think about, how are we breathing? Now, when I said about having a lion or a bear or a real threat, a physical threat in front of us, well, what we would do is we would rapidly need oxygen because we would need to fight or fly. So when we're rapidly taking in oxygen, we start breathing in really fast, and to get this oxygen in. And so any kind of breathing technique, whichever one you choose, and you can look online and there'll be many, but what you need to realise is that really it's about, essentially, your outtake of breath needs to be longer than your intake of breath. So your intake of breath, slow it down and just breathe in. And as you can see on the screen, you might want to breathe in for 7 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then breathe out for 8 seconds. And just try that. And I would actually invite you really to try that, and just try that for yourself, and just try it a couple of times, just 7, 4, 8 seconds. So you breathe in for 7, hold for 4, and breathe out for 8, and just see how that works. But the other version is really simple. It's really easy to remember, especially if we're in survival mode and we forget things. This is why simple models really help, is to just breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out for 7 seconds. Breathe in for 4, breathe out for 7. And therefore, you're telling your body, we are not in a threat situation, because you're calming your body down. And breathing can be the most instantaneous thing that you can do, the most effective thing that you can do, to just tell yourself you are not under threat. So if you find yourself in a position where you think, I'm panicking, or you think you can't recollect certain things, just take a moment and take that 4 seconds in and 7 seconds out. And one really great way of remembering it is, if you pretend that you're holding a hot chocolate, if you're a fan, or whatever hot drink you want, in your 2 hands, so you're holding that mug, then what you can do is you can think, right, so I'm going to breathe, I'm going to smell the hot chocolate for 4 seconds. So you breathe in through your nose, and then you breathe out through the mouth 7 seconds, just to as though you're blowing on your hot chocolate to make it cooler. And then you breathe, you smell it again, and you inhale that chocolate smell for 4 seconds, and then you pretend that you're just again blowing on the hot chocolate for 7 seconds. So that can be a really easy way to remember it. But so you breathe in through your nose, you breathe out through your mouth. So again, so discreet, you can do that within the assessment, but and you can do it before the assessment as well. So you can go in and you can already be calm from the word go. The other thing to say is to move on. So if you're doing a question and you think, oh, I don't know if I've done it right, and I don't know if I've said it right, and and you want to go back to it, maybe you want to go back, turn back the pages of your maths exam, whatever, there's a point where you need to say, I've done that question, and actually ruminating and worrying about that question is only going to filter out and affect and have a ripple effect on all the other questions. So once you've answered a question and you've answered it to the best you can, then move on and focus on the next question. And for some people that are quite visual, if you're very visual, it can help to think that you're in a room and you close the door before you then move on to the next page and get your next question, for example. And then open another door by opening a page, and then you close the page. But it's really important to be really present in mind, and just the question that's being asked in hand, focus on that there and then, and then move on, because otherwise you can go into a spiral effect. Some people as well, to snap yourself out of freeze mode, some people wear a hairband or a elastic band, and they just again, you can do this discreetly if you're don't show your hands online, but if you just stretch the elastic band against your wrist so that it just gives you a little bit of a shock, can sometimes just put you back into snap you out of rumination, really. So it's just tips like that to think about in terms of moving on, making sure you have a glass of water as well, but just realizing that a question at a time, you're only going to get a question at a time, and then as soon as that one's done to your best ability, you move on and don't worry about it. That one's done now. So if you want to go back, then fine. If you, for example, your maths and English, but take each question at time. Because I have known lots of people to have a question and then they're still focusing on the last question. So then it just wastes time, and you're not giving the clarity of thought that's needed for the new question in hand. Okay. So I would like to ask you the final question, which is, what strategies are you going to use to help you? Really think about what resources you've got, who can help you, can you get any peer support from your colleagues, but also from your cohorts, and yeah, and what strategies can you take? How can you look at these models that you've been introduced to today? And all else I can say is absolutely best of luck, and yeah, thank you for listening. I hope this has been really helpful for you today, and I hope that this has given you some food for thought in terms of your own anxiety and nervousness management. Thank you.